Okay, so today's date is June 29th, 2018, and we are located at Westminster Village in Bloomington, Illinois. My name is Rachel Madros, and today we have interviewed Gene Sessamen. The last name is Sessamen. So, Gene, to start off, where and when were you born?
I was born in 1927 in Mansion, New Jersey. That's Gloucester County, New Jersey.
And what did your parents do for the living?
Oh gosh, well, my dad was a carpenter superintendent, building superintendent in construction, and my mom, I guess, was just a homemaker at the time. Yeah, and moved around quite a bit. I don't remember a whole lot about that time, but we moved from there to into Pennsylvania, and my mom and dad ran back then food markets along the roadway were popular, and we ran one of those, or the family did, for a few years, and then we just moved around until my mom and dad bought interest into a hotel in White River Junction, Vermont, and moved up there, and I went into the service. I was 17 and joined the Naval Reserve, and then I was called up in October, I think it was, 1945.
Do you have any other family members, Gene? That brothers and sisters?
Oh, yeah, my brother, a little bit of a radical. He was he ran away, and he joined when he was 16, and he was in the Navy also, and I guess that's what made me join the Navy too. Was that he big brother in the Navy kind of a thing, you know? So,
Right.
yeah.
And then, what happened when you departed for training camp, and how were your early days of training? What was that like?
Okay, we left, let's see, I was in, I got to get it all straight here. I was in Vermont at the time, living in Vermont, and went to Rutland, Vermont, and that's where we deployed from there by bus to Rhode Island, Charlestown, Rhode Island, and spent some time there. I was an apprentice seaman, and I was assigned to the carpenter shop, and we were a unit called the Carrier Aircraft Service Unit, and we were going to go commission the USS Philippine Sea, but it had not yet commissioned, but we were ready. We were going to be there when it was commissioned. And I was in Charlestown, Rhode Island. I was in Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and then we went down south to Carolina, Elizabeth City, Carolina. It still is the same group, and so I was just in the carpenter shop most of the time, waiting to go on ship when it was commissioned. But the war was over. This was early 1946. And the war was over, and I was in the Naval Reserve, and the reserve is duration plus 6 months. Well, then the war ended, so it was about 6 months later. I was discharged in October, I think it was, of '46. I think it was 6. So that was one interesting thing. One interesting thing, and when I was interviewed being discharged, I was a seaman 2 or apprentice seaman. You usually are for a year or more before you get that third stripe on your sleeve. And the lieutenant that was interviewing me finally asked. He said, "What's your future like?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I really don't know what I want to do." He said, "Well, would you want to re-up? In other words, sign up for another tour?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I've thought about that, and it's interesting, but I'm not sure if that's what I want to do." He said, "Well, how about if I give you Seaman First, another stripe, and see if that'll make up your mind?" So on the paperwork, I was discharged as Seaman First because I decided, I guess that's not what I want to do. But so I was Seaman First for one day when I went out. But since then, I've kind of wished that I had stayed, but you know, that's past thinking. You never know for sure what you're going to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
Did you receive any specialized training?
No.
And if so, what that was like?
No, I was carpenter's mate. It would have been had I stayed. Yeah, because I had some experience in carpenter work. So
Gotcha.
that's why. Yeah.
And then how about after you served? How was what were you involved in?
Well, I had two buddies that I went through boot camp with, and then lost contact with them because we went to different places. But I knew where they lived, and we contacted each other a little bit, but not real close because they went their way, and I went up in Vermont. And that's kind of away from the rest of them. So, and I did not have any contact with any of the fellows I was with during the time I was in the carpenter shop. So.
Did you have the benefit of the GI Bill?
No, I never took advantage of that.
But that was offered to you. You were eligible for that?
Far as yes, I'm considered a veteran.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So I would have been eligible for it. I never did take advantage of it, though.
Okay.
One thing that did benefit me when I was out, I had enlisted in Vermont, so I was when I was discharged, I was sent back to Vermont, and the state of Vermont at that time gave every discharged veteran $20 a week for a year. So we were known as the 5220 Club. But $20 a week back then in 1946 was a pretty good piece of money. About $100, I would think, something like that. Very, very generous. So, and that certainly helped. You know.
So what did you do after you were discharged?
Well, I didn't have much of a trade. My folks had a hotel up there at that time, and so I worked part-time in the hotel, but that $20 a week was burning a hole in my pocket too, so I didn't do a whole lot. Not a whole lot, but I did meet my wife there, and that all worked out just fine. But I had a trade as a carpenter, and I went back after I left Vermont, and after we were married, I went back down to New Jersey, and my father and I had a construction business in New Jersey. And quite some time, and had that for maybe 10 years or so, and then I went to work for the state of New Jersey as a safety inspector in construction, and I did that for about 10 years, and then I moved up different areas in the state of New Jersey in the Department of Labor, and after 30 years they had an incentive to retire. So I wasn't going to go. I was 64 years old. I wasn't going to go, but I thought maybe they're not going to do this again. Maybe I better go. So they gave us an extra 5 years as consideration for our retirement. So instead of retiring at 30 years, I retired at 35. The formula was when you retired, your retirement benefit was years of service over, how was it? Years of service over 30, I think it was, or no, over 50. And later on, I took advantage of that, so I got out of it when I was 65 or 64. So, then worked for the state of New Jersey for 30 years, got out at 35, and then I just simply retired then, went to volunteer work. I volunteered in the State House as a docent, a tour guide. Did that for a number of years, and did a few other things. And then we felt we had built a house in 1978 in the meantime. 1980, we went to Germany. Our son-in-law and daughter, he was a graduate at West Point. And when he graduated, that day they got married, and then they went to Germany. And so they said, why don't you come over and visit us? So in 1980, we went over to Germany, toured Germany with them for 3 weeks, went into 7 different countries. And that was just great. And after that, 1991 is when I retired from the state. And just did whatever I wanted to do, because I didn't have to do anything, really. Pension was pretty good. And I also got Social Security, so the income was was nice. I didn't have to think hard about where was the next dollar coming from or anything, so that was good. And then our daughter, when he got out of the Army after 14 and a half years, he was a West Point graduate. They were in Utah. His company, he went to work for a company in Utah. And they went there, and then after they were there a few years, his company, whose their biggest client was State Farm. State Farm wanted the representative of that company out here, so they moved out here. And they said, "Why don't you retire out here?" So we come out to look, and here we are. Here we are, yeah. So.
How do you think your military experiences have affected or impacted your life?
Not really, no. I thought it was good, and I think every young fellow should spend a couple of years in the service. Mm-hmm. You get some discipline that you probably didn't get at home, a little stricter discipline, and a lot more responsibility. And I really think that every youth at 18 and 19 years old should go in the service for a couple of years, at least 2 years. Mm-hmm. If not more, and a lot of them would stay. I think a lot of them would stay and be off the street.
Yeah. So. Is there any life lessons that you've learned throughout your military service? Or
no, not really. No, just a matter of do what they tell you and don't complain.
Did your brother survive the war? The one that was in the
Yes,
Navy?
he did. He did. But he was in and out a little bit. Once in a while, he'd get in a little trouble and he'd get demoted and all. And after a few years, I don't remember how many years it was, he went out and he couldn't stay outside long. He went back in again. And he was on the USS Iowa that commissioned the Iowa. It means he was a plank owner. He was one of the first ones on. And on one of his tours across overseas, President Roosevelt was on the boat, and Ray was a radar operator. And President Roosevelt came down and stood right alongside of him to see what he was doing. So it was pretty exciting for him. But through smoking and through, they think also his effect of radiation while he was below deck like that, it affected him. He had throat cancer. And later on, he was operating how to, I forget what it's called up here, when they put a hole in her throat, tracheotomy. And he lived with that for quite a few years, and then he died of cancer a few years ago. Yeah. And I had a sister that she was married. They lived in southern New Jersey. Her husband was a fisherman, owned a boat that went out for a week at a time, caught the fish, and either sold it over the side or brought it into shore and sold it there. And they're both gone now too. And then I have a younger brother. He didn't go into service at all. He was 5 years younger than I am, and he went into technology, computer technology. He was worked for Sprint. He was vice president, I think, of Sprint Company before they were Sprint. It was Southern Pacific Railroad. Was the beginning of Sprint. That's where they got the Sprint from. And he was vice president of the company there for a while. Then he retired too. He's living in New Jersey now. So.
Okay. Is there anything else you feel like we haven't touched on, or anything else you would like to add?
Oh gosh, that's enough about me, I think. I can't tell you about the honor flight if you're not familiar with that. What that is, I had the opportunity to go on that a few years ago. Howard Reed and I, you'll probably interview Howard later on if you haven't already. Yeah, he and I went together, and it's really a lifetime experience. I don't know if anybody's told you what it's like or not, but you're interviewed first, and then you have somebody along with you. Howard and I could have one person with us, a guide, because we were mobile. We were able to get along ourselves. So he came down and interviewed us, and all. He was from up around Chicago area, come down and visit us, and they're volunteers. They do this voluntarily. It's about $400 trip or so for them. but it didn't cost us anything. But you start out, we went down to Springfield. We went down the night before because you start out at 4:30 in the morning. So we went to the airport about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and all congregated there. And finally we got on the flight and started out. And when we landed in Washington, D.C., there was a whole group of military, the service people, and volunteers, and women and children to greet us coming as we deplaned in Washington. And then we got on a bus and they took us around to, first of all, to the World War II monument, fairly new, really. And we spent quite a bit of time there. And then we went, toured around Washington a little bit, past the Pentagon, and this is right after the 9/11 when the Pentagon was attacked. And we ended up in Arlington Cemetery, and we watched the changing of the guard. Oh, that was very impressive too. And then we got on the bus, went back to the airport, and come home. And when we got home, it was amazing that Springfield Airport was just full of people that had come to greet us as we came home. And it was really heart-rending to see them. We got big hugs and all, and a big thank you, and shaking hands and all. It was just wonderful. And what they had done on the flight coming home was that early on they had contacted members of each family to provide pictures, memos, or whatever for that particular veteran, and they had them in an envelope. This was all a surprise to us. They had them in an envelope and gave them to us on the flight.
Oh, yeah.
And then we read them when we got home. And I had a bunch from children, I think 4th or 5th grade, with a big thank you or a flag or something else. And then some letters from my family also. It was pretty touching. And that was just great what they had done to honor the veterans. And the World War II veterans are about gone. Not many of them left, so they've gone to Korean veterans and also Vietnam veterans too. They're doing that now. And it's just great when these people are all volunteers, what they do, and they just do it to honor the veterans. Mm-hmm. It's just wonderful. Yeah.
What were some of the things that people wrote, if you remember?
Oh gosh, the kids all wrote, thank you for your service and you're a great guy and all that stuff. And the family, same kind of thing, personal stuff, So yeah, it was great, it really was. Of course, you keep all that; it's up there someplace.
Great. Well, Gene, is there any other?
I don't think so. I saw quite a bit. That's I'm not used to that, so you have to excuse me for that.
Well, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your service.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel.